the word hood, I often think of a person, a place, and perhaps even a thing. Welcome to Muhlenberg County Ghost Stories from the Hood, narrated by the one and only Sir Creepsta. Tonight's terrifying episode is entitled The Tracks. Back when I was young, growing up in Central City, it was great for the most part. I had many peers to hang out with and just do the things that most teenagers did. I enjoyed the peaceful, subtle atmosphere that Central City offered. Crime was little to none, so for the most part, we spent much of our time outdoors just hanging out. But like anywhere in the U.S., where there's good, you can count on it. And right around the corner, just lurking, came the bad. And in mine and several of my friends' cases, the bad seemed to always come in the form of something supernatural or something we just could not explain. The story I'm about to share with you tonight happens to be yet another of my personal ones. So sit back, relax, grab some snacks, and be terrified. Back in 1988, I was a young man living in Nashville, Tennessee. Life was good for me and my significant other at the time. My parents, as well as two of my siblings, still lived in Central City. I would generally make the drive up from Nashville about every 4 or 5 months to visit with my family and friends, seeing that it was only about an hour and a half drive away. Normally, I would go there on a Friday and return to Nashville early on Monday morning to be at work. On this particular trip, all was going well up until Saturday night. It was then that my mama would ask me if I'd run to the local Red Ace market and grab her some late night snacks. Of course, I told my mama sure. Just let me slip on my shoes. Normally, I would have just hopped in my car and shot over to the local market. But because it was such a calm, peaceful night outside, I decided to just walk, since it's only about a 20-minute walk round trip. The fastest route from my mama's house to Red Ace was through the park, across the railroad tracks, through the Ebenezer Baptist churchyard, and then I would pretty much be at my destination. So that's exactly what I did. Once I arrived at the store, I ran into an old friend of mine who happened to be working the late night shift. Happy to see me, my friend immediately started offering me whatever I wanted in the store, just so he could conversate with me and catch up on lost time. But before I knew it, what should have been a 25-minute trip tops quickly turned into a couple of hours. And after glancing at my watch, I noticed that it was about 1:45 to midnight. So I quickly grabbed up my mama's things, said my goodbyes, and I was on my way. Realizing how long I had been gone, I quickly got into a fast-paced trot, thinking all along how my mom was going to kill me for taking so long to get back with her things. What had began as a bright, star-filled night had quickly turned into a dark, black night without a star in the sky. As I made my way across Carol's laundromat, I cut down through the alley, crossed over First Street, which then brought me to the edge of the Ebenezer Baptist churchyard. It was here I decided to jog the rest of the way to Mama's house. This didn't go well at all. By the time I'd made it to the tracks, I thought I was going to die from pure exhaustion. So I leaned over the tracks to catch my breath. As I took my second step over the tracks, I heard the sound of something kicking up gravel further down the tracks. So I stood there trying to see who or what was making these sounds. Bear in mind, I grew up in the country, so seeing or hearing all sorts of critters on the tracks at night was something that was very common. At first, the noise really didn't bother me. That was until I noticed the sound of the gravel getting closer to me, even though I still didn't see anything in my way. By now, I was starting to get just a little nervous. And after my fourth and fifth steps, I started to make out a figure of something walking towards me. The only problem I had with this was that where the figure started to emerge, I had looked in that direction only a few seconds earlier, and no one or nothing was there. At first sight, I thought it might be a friend of mine. He went by the nickname of Goat, so I calmly shouted his name out a couple of times, but to no response. I then told myself, okay, then it has to be yet another friend of mine that went by the name of Richie Rich. I called his name out a couple of times as well, but still no response. But now the figure had gotten so close to me that although it was very dark outside, I was still able to see that it was a man appearing to be wearing a suit and a hat. As the man got even closer to me, I could feel cold chill bumps all over my arms. By the time he got around 20 feet from me, I could see him as clear as day. He was wearing a tan or a beige suit with a hat to match. But the one thing that stuck out like a sore thumb was that he had no face. I mean, he had no mouth, nose, eyes, or ears. It was as if he was a silhouette of a man with no human features. More frightened than I ever been in my whole entire life, I dropped my head down and proceeded to continue crossing the tracks. And when I got to the edge of the hill leading down off into the park, I ran. Once I reached the park, I turned around to see if the man had followed me, and thank God he hadn't. He had continued to walk down the tracks, with his shadow periodically peering through the trees that lined the tracks at that time. As I cautiously watched the faceless man through the trees, I was totally unaware of what was happening all around me. And it wasn't until I turned around, about to make my way to my mom's house, that I noticed that a pack of dogs had formed a complete circle around me. They started growling at me as if they had a taste for some well-done meat, and I immediately assumed that they and the faceless man were working together, and they were sent to keep me there until he returned. Scared out of my mind, I slowly knelt down, grabbing a handful of rocks to use against these hounds of hell. I slowly eased myself back up to a full stance, and then I yelled out, "Get!" to the mutts. And for some reason, they all stopped their growling and struck out in all directions from me. And as magically as they had seemed to appear, all around me, they seemed to vanish the same way. This was the moment I was waiting for. I struck out like a bolt of lightning. I jumped the ditch at the park. I ran the rest of the way home to Mama's house. As I reached Mama's house, I started pounding on her door, knocking frantically. In what seemed to be like 5 minutes, Mama angrily opened the door. And to my disbelief, the first words out of her mouth was, "Something done chased your black butt home, ain't it, boy? Because you should have been here a long time ago back from that store." I handed Mama her things that she had asked me to get, and I went into my bedroom, never once mentioning what had happened to me on the way back from the market. I went the entire next day still keeping my experience from the night before to myself. And next night, I went up on the place we called the Hill. There I ran into a friend of mine, a guy we called Buzzy B, whose real name was Courtney. When Courtney walked up to me, coming from the path that led to the tracks, he had a frightened look all over his face. I asked him, "Why are you looking that way?" And his reply was that he had just seen someone or something on the tracks. And at first he thought it was a guy named Richie Rich, and then he mentioned the name Goat. It turned out there was neither one of those, because just like my experience the night before, Courtney too had ran into the faceless man on the tracks. Beware of the faceless man if you are anywhere near Gish Park or into the city, especially on any creepy, eerie dark night, for he still roams the tracks late at night. My name is Sir Creepsta. Until next time, stay terrified.